Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this, the Thanksgiving edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show. I'm Ashley Benab, Chris Jerry, Vincent Charles, Stephen Manges. Joining you here at the table, our good friend Kevin Jeter. He is away on assignment. A little bit of rest and relaxation as well. He'll join us again in December. A cornucopia of topics for you guys. We're going to discuss a whole lot of things, but first, you know how to get in touch with us. Facebook.com/The Nation's Capital Sports Show, or, of course, at info@tncss.net. Let's talk about those Washington Redskins. Vincent, I'm looking directly at you because you are a Skins guy. Come off a big game against Tampa Bay, a horrible game that puts them at 3-7. Playoff aspirations down the drain now. Where do we look at this team? What do we need to do? What has to happen for this team to improve the rest of the way and then into next season? Because coaches are coaching for their jobs, players are playing for their jobs.
I think it's an evaluation period once again for the Redskins. Two key injuries today in the offensive line really hurt the Redskins. RG3 being sacked 6 times. The offense just couldn't get it going. Defensively, the young defensive backs having a lot of trouble, especially with Evans there at Tampa Bay.
I want to piggyback off of you and talk about the secondary having issues, and I think the young guys at the corner have actually proven to do better than expected, at least with Breland and Amerson. But I'm going to stick with it and go with the coaching as well in the defense. Haslett, who's a guy that personally I've been kind of calling for his head as soon as they hired him, when they hired him the first time originally, and somehow he managed to stick around after a coaching regime change and Gruden gets hired. I don't know how he was the lone piece that remained after a Redskins defense was near the bottom of the league, and it looks like they're going to end there again, and they really didn't do anything to address safety, which seems to be like the most important position in his blitzing defense that leaves you left hanging and dry, which you certainly saw today with Mike Evans tearing him apart.
Yeah, Ryan Clark, he's one of the most experienced players in the league, and he looks like a rookie out there sometimes. Chris, what about Robert Griffin III? How much blame does he have? I agree with Stephen on the Jim Haslett part. I think that his time has come and gone now, and they do need to move on defensively. But what about Robert Griffin III? Do you think, as an objective, non-Washington Redskins fan, that he is the man that can lead this team? Or is he injury prone?
Well, he's injury prone. I'm not sure that he is the quarterback to lead this team if he insists on wanting to be a pocket passer. I think if he's going to be the quarterback to lead this team for success, then I think he has to go ahead and run a lot more, similar to what he did his first year.
I agree with you on that. I think that he can certainly be a good quarterback on a good team and a poor quarterback on a bad team, as you've seen, basically.
Vincent, go ahead.
I don't believe he's got the necessary people around him yet.
Right.
That has been proven in the last couple of seasons. So the Redskins, they have to work from getting an offensive line together, getting a defensive line together, getting the necessary people around him. He's got good receivers, but there are a lot of gaps that the Redskins need to fill. I disagree. I think he needs to become more of a pocket passer because with his stature, and if you look around the league, those teams leading the league, they are not read option teams. He needs to be a pocket passer and, once again, be able to use his speed when needed.
Where I would disagree with you there is, if he was a pocket passer type quarterback, yes, it would be good to be a pocket passer, but I don't think he really has the skills to be back there. I don't think he has the size, and I just think that's just something that's really not his thing. I think he needs to use his legs a little bit more.
Yeah, I think he has the skill set to really kind of be either, but right now particularly his footwork is pretty atrocious in the pocket, and that's why he needs to be a read option quarterback and run out of the pocket, because his footwork within the pocket is kind of what's keeping him back, as well as the mentality on the reads and everything else. That's what's kept him back. But physically on this team, if you compare any other quarterbacks, I think undoubtedly he still has the highest potential, the highest ceiling, and the best physical skills, not counting knowing the system, than any of the other two quarterbacks.
He's certainly the most athletic. I'll take it another step and say I think changes must be made in the front office. You've got Trent Baalke, who's the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, 3 consecutive NFC championships. John Schneider, who's a general manager of the Seattle Seahawks. He's gone to a Super Bowl, the reigning and defending Super Bowl champion Seahawks right now. And Morocco Brown, who is now the head of director of player personnel at Cleveland. And look what the Cleveland Browns are doing. Those 3 guys were in-house here from 2001 to 2008, depending. They overlapped a little bit, and they never were promoted. Other teams saw what they could do, and they promoted him. Let's move on now to the Washington Capitals. Will go on Frozen Pond. I call them bipolar, Stephen.
Yeah.
Because they'll win 3 in a row, they'll lose 3 in a row. They'll win 5 in a row, they'll lose 5 in a row. And where are they at this point? At this juncture, they are 7-7. What say you?
Yeah, they're 7-7-3. Lots of shootout games, which seems to be a trend, even going back to the Oates eras. Lots of games going past regulation, but certainly a hot and cold team right now. But I do think Trotz is on the right path, kind of sticking with his system. You just kind of got to get the players and everyone to buy into it, and things will start to work themselves out a little bit more. But it's certainly an evaluation period, both for the players and Trotz's system and for Trotz and McClellan on the players. This roster is certainly going to be different by the end of the year. It's just how different is still to be determined. Mike Green, definitely one of those high evaluation players right now.
Well, you and I agree the same about Mike Green.
Yeah.
Chris,
Time to go.
Yeah, it is. Chris,
Yeah.
I know you weren't the biggest fan of this new hiring of Barry Trotz.
No,
Has
not
anything
at all.
has anything changed since the beginning of the season up through the 17 games now?
Well, I don't watch it as closely as Steven, but from what I can see record-wise, nothing really has changed that much. I don't know. Again, what I always say on this show is it's too early in the season. The 82-game season, 7-7-3. So they played 17 games, which means they haven't even played a quarter of the season yet. Right. I still want to see some progress, but at this particular point in time, as long as they're treading water and not losing and at the bottom of their metropolitan division,
right,
I think they're okay.
They're right in the middle, Vincent.
I think inconsistency is the word right now for the Capitals. I think they're just learning to coach. The coach is learning the players. There are going to be ups and downs throughout the season, like we've just seen in these past 17 games. You win a few, you lose a few. I think their goal with this new coach, Barry Trotz, is to make the playoffs.
Well, let's put it to you guys in this way. Let's make a quick prediction through 17 games. Where do you see them at the end? How far? What will their seed be if they make the playoffs? Or does anyone here on the panel think they won't make the playoffs, Stephen?
I think they'll be right on the cusp. I think the high expectation or best potential would be getting to like 92, 94 points, which will have you kind of in that bottom of the playoff range, but more realistically, maybe in that 86 to 90 range, just a few less, and right on the edge of whether they're the bottom seed or not.
Vincent?
I think they're a lower tier playoff team.
Well, they're playing like it right now, and I don't know if anything is going to change too much. I'm not into the Barry Trotz era yet, but maybe he'll change my mind.
And I think Stephen hit it right on that and hit the nail on the head. I think they'll be somewhere right there on the cusp, of making the play. I don't think they're going to be a high seed, but they may be on one of those last 2 or 3 spots in.
But maybe Mike Green's trade evaluation goes up and they can get something good in return. And that.
Oh my!
But I digress.
Can you
Probably
see?
not.
Can you see them being a 7 or 8 seed and having to play the Montreal Canadiens in the first round, who are just on fire right now? That would not be fun if you are a Washington Capitals fan. But they may turn it around. Let's move on now to the hardboard courts of the NBA, and I've been excited to talk about them. And Chris, the Washington Wizards are the best pro team in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, yes?
Well, now that the soccer season is over, I guess that's true in the baseball season. I'm happy that the Wizards are 7-2, and to kind of tell you how much futility it's been basketball-wise here, that's their best start to a season in over 40 years.
40 years,
40
4 decades.
years. And inside that 40 years now, they actually won an NBA championship and went to another final series. So that tells you. The thing that impressed me the most about the Wizards right now is something, again, I harp on a lot. Beating the teams you're supposed to beat. They haven't had a really hard schedule to open the season, and so they've won these games, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, speaking of the schedule, every win's been teams under 500, and both losses teams above 500.
Great start, Av Sheen. I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest surprises, and what they do need to get to the playoffs again is the depth they're showing. The bench has really come on early in the season. When certain guys, certain starters are not having a good game, it seems like the bench players have been able to come in and contribute.
Right. What about Otto Porter now? Stepping in as he has had to as the number 3 overall pick last year. Chris, are you impressed with what he's done so far?
I like what I see. I'm impressed but I like what I see, and I think it's definitely he's shown enough to show that he can be a corner piece of this team, and it should be coming back for a third year.
How about John Wall, Stephen? I think he's shown a lot of maturity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these games that they should be winning, he has stepped up, especially the Indiana game where they won. They barely won, but he stepped up at the end, and he actually controlled the game. And there are times when he hasn't been able to control the game or didn't need to control it, and someone else did step up. But I like John Wall's maturity so far.
I definitely do. I think Wall has improved upon his play from last year, and I think a lot of it actually has to do with that signing of Paul Pierce. I think he provided a lot of leadership. He immediately went to Wall and Beal, the two guys, and told them what they needed to do to be the elite guys. And then you're looking at Beal hopefully coming back against the Cavaliers, and then that should provide perhaps one of the best backcourts in the league.
Vincent?
And I was about to make that point. Let's not forget. This is all without Bradley Beal.
Yeah,
It is, and who knows what happens when he comes back. But let's also realize the front court has done well with or without Paul Pierce. I like what Nene Hilario has done, and I like, of course, Martin Gortat. They've both played quite well as a front court duo.
Yeah, I think they have. And just an aside, just to throw a weird one in there, did you guys see the Christmas jerseys that got released with the names on the back? You mentioned Nene, so it popped in my head.
Nene popped up there, yeah.
His name will remain the same.
I want to go off the tracks a second and mention about the Christmas jersey, because I'll tell you what I thought when I saw it, where they're going to have the name in white in the back.
Right.
I believe that coming down the road, this is where we're going to see the NBA start marketing and putting sponsor names. I think they're going to go on the back of the jersey. And I think when I saw that, that's what I was thinking ahead of, is that I wonder if down the road that's where they're going to put a marketing thing.
Oh, that's a good point, because the NBA is all full of marketing. That's what they're full of. All right. You are watching the nation's capital sports show on Arlington Independent Media, Comcast 69, Fios 38. We've got more to talk about. We went from the frozen pond to the gridiron. We went to the hardboard courts of the NBA. When we come back, DC United on the pitch. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the nation's capital sports show. Chris Jerry, Vincent Charles, Stephen Mangas. I'm Afshin Banab, and we're going to move on to the pitch. In DC United, they went from worst in the ML East Eastern Conference to first from 2013 to 2014. Of course, they bowed out quite early, losing to the New York Red Bulls in 2 games, aggregate goals, of course. And Chris, I was impressed with the season that Ben Olsen had. I was sort of upset at how it ended, but nonetheless, it was a successful season.
It was a successful season. They were the only top seed of the 4 first-round playoff games that the home team didn't advance to the semifinal round. But all in all, when you consider what they did last year and the fact that they did win the Eastern Conference this year for the #1 seed there and finished 3 points away from the Supporters' Shield, that was a great year.
Yeah, Stephen, I don't know how much you follow soccer as much as Chris does, or even I do, but I like what Ben Olsen does. I like his spirit, young coach.
Yeah.
And he gets people to buy into his.
Yeah, I certainly might not follow it as much, but I think the system definitely seems to be bought into. To go have that transition, as you said, is certainly impressive. I still think that's an impressive year, and I think the most important thing for United this year was probably the coming on of Bill Hamid. It seems like that was one of the things that really sparked the transition. They were tied for fewest goals against in the entire league with the Galaxy at a 37, I believe, and Hamid's on his way to becoming a star. He's getting called up for the few remaining U.S. men's national team games as well.
Yeah, they played well. I think, Seattle's, to me, is going to be the team that wins it in this whole thing. I think they're really good. But Vincent, comments on DC United?
Well, I think coming from where they were last year, that it was really a very successful season. Great season for Coach Ben Olsen. I think some injuries there late in the season hurt them. They just weren't sharp in the playoffs. And you can't take anything away from their regular season. Great year. It
was a good year. I'm going to give you the getaway question, Chris, and then you have a little story to tell us. What changes would you make for DC United going into next season?
Boy, they had such a successful season. I don't know that I would make any changes. I'd like to see Eddie Johnson on the pitch a little bit more. He had some injuries early, and then he had the concussion. But I'm okay with what happened this year. I don't think I'd make many changes.
Well, you heard it here first from Coach Chris Jerry. All right.
Yeah, I was just going to
tell us a story. You actually saw one of the playoff games.
I was going to share this little story. I went to the first leg of the playoff series between DC United and Red Bulls. It was played up in Harrison, New Jersey at Red Bull Arena, and was surprised. I got a ticket to sit in the DC United fans section, and I was surprised when I went in the stadium to see that at Red Bull Arena they actually had European-style segregation. We were all put in section 220, and not only that, after the game was over, people in 220 could not leave until the rest of the stadium left, just like in Europe. I thought that was a bit much, but nonetheless, it was a good season for DC United, and looking forward to next year. And before I leave this point, you know, the Red Bulls haven't won their playoff series with United. They'll play New England in the East, and it'll be the Seattle Sounders and LA Galaxy in the West, and that starts this coming weekend.
I'm telling you, Seattle's going to take it. The Sounders, man. That's just my opinion. Do you think that you could see that more in MLS soccer, what you experienced in New Jersey?
I don't think it's necessary, but I'll tell you, I related some of my experiences with some fans and some of the fan discussion groups, and surprisingly, a lot of the fans seem to think that segregation was needed, especially because DC United fans and Red Bull fans have had this kind of tension over the years, and some folks thought that, hey, if you just let people roam and mix in, it could be fights. So maybe
we'll see. Hopefully it won't get to that.
It's rowdier than Dodgers Giants or Skins Cowboys or.
Let's move on, guys. We're going to call this one our All Sorts of Sports segment. We're just going to bandy about a couple of different topics and give our opinions on these. And the first one, of course, is the football format, the college football rankings, the top 4 teams. We used to have the BCS, and now we have a committee of 13, actually 12. Archie Manning was one of the 13, but he, for health reasons, said he couldn't do it. So now there's a committee of 12 people, and they pick who they believe are the top 4 teams. And these 4 teams will actually have playoff games in January on the field, and which will determine a national championship. The 1 seed will play the 4 seed, the 2 seed will play the 3 seed, and then, of course, the winners will meet for the national championship game. And Mississippi State was number 1. They lost to number 5, Alabama. TCU was number 4. They barely got by a very weak Kansas Jayhawk team. Yeah. The number 2 team, I know I'm going back and forth here, the number 2 team is Oregon. They had the bye. And help me out, gentlemen, the number 3 team?
Mississippi State and TCU and Florida State.
Florida State. And they barely got by Miami. So take it, Chris. What do you think about the format? Let's start there. What do you think about the format and how they are working it out now?
Well, the one thing that CBS commentator Gary Danielson said, which I kind of agree with, Gary wanted to see the committee come out with their listings at the end of the season instead of weekly, because right now, weekly, you don't know where they are. One of the things that I haven't really heard national press say, which needs to be kept in consideration, is one of the top things in this playoff is they give high credit to winning your conference. Of course, when you're giving rankings before the end of the season, you don't know who's won a conference. So there's a lot of discussion now about, for example, will the SEC get 2 teams, or will it be every conference be there? Because with 4 spots, you got 5 major conferences, so somebody's going to be left out. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm a BCS guy. I like the old system. I mean, in a way, to call the playoff, this is a +1 system. Call this a playoff with just 4 teams seems like a little bit much.
Right. You know what? You could have taken the BCS rankings and the top 4 rankings and let those guys play it at the end of that one. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I think it really boils down to a +1 system for sure, and it's unfortunate to see this year there's not an undefeated smaller school system, because that's really who it was meant to benefit when you had, you know, in previous years, teams like Boise State that had their undefeated season and didn't get the chance to play for a title and ended up in Fiesta Bowls and things like that. But there's none of that this year, so it's even more of a mix and a question as to who are those top 4 teams going to be and what it's going to be in the conference. And the weekly releasing is just a publicity thing. I mean, that's just to get the talk going, and it does. But of course, once you get to those conference championship weeks and the rest of the season, it's all going to play itself out in a totally different story.
And I'm sorry, your Pittsburgh Panthers aren't in it, Vincent, but neither are my Michigan Wolverines.
Everything's going to shake out in the next 2 weeks. I don't think there's anything wrong with the weekly rankings. I think that just makes the teams more competitive and more psyched about it. I would like to see a 16-team playoff format, just like some of the other divisions in college. Maybe it just is going to be a couple of years of the NCAA getting their feet wet. Maybe they'll go 4 teams, then 8 teams, whatever. But like I say, it's going to shake out in the next 2 weeks. I don't think there are going to be 2 teams from the SEC. I think they're going to try to balance around the country.
Well, let's see what happens. Baylor is ranked lower than TCU. Baylor beat TCU on the field, though a lot of people say it was lucky, right? They made that great comeback in the fourth quarter. So there's a lot of teams in right now. There are some on the outside looking in who could end up being one of the top 4 teams. OSU, another one. The Ohio State Buckeyes. They just beat Minnesota.
State.
Arizona. Well, they did lose, though. They just lost, so they probably won't. But we'll see. Oregon looks like they'll represent the Pac-12 in the top 4 as long as they keep winning. Let's move on. NL and AL managers of the year, they come from the Beltways in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Washington Nationals pitcher Matt Williams gets the National League Manager of the Year. Buck Showalter of the Baltimore Orioles, he gets the American League Manager of the Year. Do you guys have any disagreement with either one of those picks?
Nope.
That's it?
Not really. I mean, I think there's argument for Ned Yost of the Royals just because of what he did in the playoffs, but obviously he only made it as a wild card team, so he didn't perform during the entirety of the season to have the top seed as Showalter did. But still, the 8 straight wins in the postseason was pretty incredible for the Royals, and that certainly had the excitement
Vincent,
of the
you're
nation.
smiling, man. What are you thinking?
No great disagreement on their regular season performance, but both managers flopped in the playoffs, especially Matt Williams.
Clayton Kershaw, Corey Kluber, they won the Cy Youngs for the National League and American League, respectively, gentlemen. How about that? I think Kershaw absolutely deserved it. Kluber, you probably had a little bit of a disagreement there that you could have given it to King Felix, right, Chris?
Absolutely. That's who I would have given it to.
You would have given the AL MVP
Felix
Cy Young to King
Hernandez.
Felix. You guys too?
Yeah, I think either one of them, whether you said Kluber or Felix, it wasn't going to make much of a difference. It's both are deserving, but Felix had one of his best years ever, and I believe, already won a Cy Young, and to improve upon that year. But it's just stiff competition. But he did actually finish higher in the MVP voting than Kluber did. yeah. So he finished 10th in the MVP voting, and Kluber finished 11th. And it just goes to show that just different writers and different voters they all had them 1A and 1B. It would have been interesting, maybe a shared award.
My getaway question. That's right.
Yeah.
My getaway question. Clayton Kershaw also won MVP.
Yeah.
Do you think pitchers, Vincent, should be able to have both the MVP and the Cy Young?
No, I do not. Only in the instance where there is clearly an indecision on who the MVP should be. Maybe there wasn't players out there that had great offensive seasons or offensive statistics, or someone who has not been an all-round player, maybe a pitcher. But
does this year fall into that for you or not?
It's hard to say because Kershaw could be deserving of the MVP. But going back with the way I feel, yes, this year.
I was about to say, what are you talking about, man?
I thought this year
only when it's not clear. This is a year where it's not clear.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty clear that the offense was...
Clayton Kershaw had a great year. Of course, Mike Trout won the AL MVP.
More than a great year. Clayton Kershaw's historic.
Yeah, it was historic. Let's move on now, guys, all right? We're going to round out the show, finish up what we're thankful for in sports. I'm going to start. I'm thankful that the University of Michigan and Dave Brandon resigned, and I'm very thankful for the basketball team. I'm looking forward to the basketball season for college basketball and see how they do. Of course, we have a friend of ours who has a son now who is now on the University of Michigan basketball team. But what are you guys thankful for, Stephen? We'll start down at your end.
Well, I'm going to start pretty simple. I'm thankful just to be in D.C. in a city where we've got all 4 major teams that I can root for year round. I can go regardless of how much they break my heart every year and during each season. I get that chance to cry in the spring, the summer, the winter, and the fall.
You keep those tear ducts out.
Yeah.
I think I'm thankful for Asdrubal Cabrera, because if it wasn't for that move that the Nats made for him to have been able to come in and play second base and let Rendon just move on to third, that the Nationals wouldn't have had the season that they had.
If we can quickly throw in a congratulations to Rendon on his season in the fifth place finish in the MVP voting, too.
Yeah.
Great
Chris?
season.
I'm thankful for the technology that allows me on Saturday morning
to
get up, turn on my computer, listen to Nottingham Forest in the morning on Saturday morning, can listen to football games on the West Coast at night from wherever I want in the United States by internet and streaming.
Well, we hope you're thankful for something, too, out there, whether it's sports-related or not. Be thankful for your family, for your friends, and you know, the holiday season upcoming. And here, everyone at Arlington Independent Media wants to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. For Chris Jerry, Vincent Charles, Stephen Manguez, I am Afshin Banab. This is the Nation's Capital Sports Show. Kevin, I've got your seat warm. You're back in December, bro. And happy Thanksgiving to you, Mr. Jeter. Stay with us for December. The Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's always on. Have a good holiday season, everyone.